Please stay tuned. I'm sorry. Tell me when. Please stay tuned. We have Dan Rowbotham here. He's the Davis Intern at Madog Center for our show today. Good afternoon and welcome. I'm Richard Sachs, Provost and Vice President for Academic Affairs at the University of Rio Grande and Rio Grande Community College in beautiful southeastern Ohio. And I'm pleased today to welcome Dan Rowbotham, who's our Davis Intern at the Madog Center for Welsh Studies here at the University of Rio Grande. Welcome, Dan.
Thank you very much.
Okay. And Dan, I want you to tell a little bit about yourself. And before I stop talking, which is rare when I stop talking, but some of the people in the viewing audience may not realize we are now celebrating the 200th anniversary of Welsh migration from Wales to southeastern Ohio. If you're not familiar with this part of Ohio, there remains a very strong Welsh identity here. Many people are part or fully Welsh and identify themselves as Welsh Americans. But Dan, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, what part of Wales you came from, your past education, things like that?
Yeah, of course. So my name is Dan, and I'm from a small village in the Avon Valley in Ceredigion, which is on the west coast of Wales. And Wales, next door to England, a lot smaller and a lot prettier. And I graduated almost 2 years ago now from the University of Wales, Trinity Saint David, and there's strong connections between Rio and TSD, and it's really great to be here. Great.
Now, I know in recent years, because we frequently have people coming over from Trinity Saint David's, and I know Gwen, I butcher her last name so I won't use it, but Gwen, the fine arts professor who was here, gave me some insights about how they've consolidated a number of the universities.
Yeah.
And so that is quite a mouthful, University of Wales, Trinity Saint David's, but in part that's because there have been some mergers and things like that?
Yeah, so it's 3 merged universities, so Lampeter, Trinity in Carmarthen, and the Swansea Institute in Swansea. So it brings them all together, and there's around 7,000 students now. So yeah, it's great. And I had the opportunity last year to represent the entire student body as the student union president. So I got to travel from Lampeter, and we also have 2 campuses in Cardiff and 1 in London. So I got a monthly trip to London.
Okay, and I know Cardiff is right on the sea, and actually Stephen Knight, one of the premier Robin Hood scholars, is at University of Cardiff. I've met him at conferences and things like that. Now, you said you're from the west coast of Wales, so for our Americans, and you know, Americans generally have horrible geography, and they can't even find their own state on the map, let alone anything in England. So being on the west coast of Wales, that's right by the Atlantic Ocean then?
Yeah, so we kind of, it's Cardigan Bay, and we look out across to Ireland. It's not normally clear enough for you to see the Green Isle, but it's there.
Okay, yeah. But you can see it on clear days.
On clear days, yeah, especially from North Wales.
Okay, well that's a great story. So some of the background work I've done, I've been a teacher and a provost and a dean for over 30 years, and one of the things that bothered me 25 years ago was some of the English majors who were doing elementary ed were using horrible versions of the Robin Hood legend, which of course is mostly in along the Great Road between going north from London, especially in the area Lincolnshire and I can't think of the main area. But at any rate, in one of the small poems, there's a give and take between Sir Guy of Gisborne, who was like the sheriff of Nottinghamshire is the other area, who's the sheriff of Nottingham, it's like his henchman. So when he wants to send people out into the forest to find Robin Hood, it's Sir Guy of Gisborne. And at one point, Sir Guy of Gisborne captures not Robin Hood, but some of the other people in his group. And Prince John, this is when he's the consort, when King Richard's fighting the Crusades, Prince John says, "Oh, thank you, Sir Guy of Gisborne. There'll be some land and a castle in it for you." And Sir Guy of Gisborne says, "Thank you so much. You are most kind." And Prince John says, "Not really, it's in Wales." So I want you to explain that to our American viewers. I know I've spent much of my life in Cleveland and Detroit, which are two cities that are always made fun of by comics on the East and West Coast. Is it because Wales is poor? Is it because it's not London or Edinburgh? Have you heard jokes like that? And if so, can you explain that to our American viewing audience?
Yeah, definitely. I think Wales has always been a little bit run by England. Even though we do have our own government, we are part of the UK. And for many years, Welsh was not taught in our schools. You'd be punished for using the Welsh language. Oh, wow. And there would be situations where Welsh communities would have trouble with English people coming in. But I think today it's not so much of that. It's more of a, there are some political arguments. There's always going to be a political argument, and that's because of devolution. So in 1997, Wales voted yes to have their own government. So that means that some powers come from Cardiff Bay and some powers come from Westminster. But we're also in Europe, so we also have rules coming from Europe at the moment as well. Okay. But I think we also get some banter, especially during the Six Nations time. So right now, where Wales play England, and unfortunately we lost.
Okay, okay.
But, yeah.
And we've got the map on the screen now, which we can't fully see from here because it's blocked by some camera equipment. But so can you help the audience tell you like where you're from and also where University of Wales Trinity Saint David's is?
Yeah. So where the arrow is pointing at the E, I'm just between the arrow and the E is Llangeitho, and that's in the Aeron Valley. So the Aeron Valley runs out and comes out in Abereiron, which is on the west coast. Okay. I was born probably just the bottom of the O there. I was born in the town of Aberystwyth, which is another university town. Right. And I was born there. And then I moved then inland a little bit. So I'm at the bottom of the river between an area called Mynydd Bach, which is Little Mountain, and then I've got the Cambrian Mountains. Then the other side of the Mynydd Bach is the Welsh coast. So I'm quite lucky, really. And then Carmarthenshire, I'm about an hour from Carmarthen. Even though it's quite close, the roads aren't amazing. There's not amazing infrastructure and straight roads like we're lucky enough to have here. Yeah. And then this is my home village. This is Llangeitho, and my family run the pub. Yeah.
Now, you've been lucky enough to be in Wales and in southeastern Ohio, and people who have seen both say it's remarkable how similar it is, that it's very green, there's a lot of mountains. And so, did you find that when you came here?
Yeah, it was one of the first things I noticed, but I also noticed that there aren't as many sheep here.
Okay, yes. Good point. Yeah, we have beef cattle, but you're right, there really are not many sheep here.
Yeah, there's one sheep to every 4 humans in Wales.
Oh, my word. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And I know when Gwen and the 4 students were here last fall, she mentioned that I think it's required, or at least optional and suggested, that students study Welsh now, because earlier in the show you said at some point it was illegal to learn it, but now it seems like the Welsh government is really supporting it.
Yeah, so I'm lucky enough that coming to Rio is the first time I'm having English medium education. So really? I studied through the medium of Welsh throughout my primary and secondary. So what you'd call the elementary, middle and high, I did it all through the Welsh medium. So I think now there's a lot more support, and you are kind of told to follow your career through the medium of Welsh. again, because of devolution, there's a lot of support for the Welsh language, and that's great. It's really good. And I did my entire undergraduate degree through the medium of Welsh, and I loved it. And it meant that we could focus on our nation rather than, you know, I did performing arts, so we did touch on the normal Shakespeare, the Brecht. Sure. We touched a couple of things, but we also focused in on Wales and the industry in Wales, so that was really great.
Okay. Now, being an English professor, even though I'm an American, I can tell the difference between an English and an Australian accent. Mm-hmm. It's very clear to me, even though other Americans will say, oh, you're British, and I'll go, no. And actually, if you ever ski in Colorado, a lot of the people working the ski areas are from Australia and New Zealand. Okay. Because they ski Southern Hemisphere during our summer and the Northern Hemisphere during our winter, and I can always tell that is not a British accent. It's a little bit different. I'm having more problems, though, distinguishing a Welsh from an English accent, but if you look at the Welsh language, it is clearly so radically different than English. So I would assume Welsh speakers have an attuned ear the way I don't to that kind of thing?
Yes, so I think the difference in the accent, it depends where you're from. I think I have a kind of a more neutral accent than a lot of people, but depends where you are. North Wales, they have a stronger accent, as does South Wales, and then maybe mid to the west, they don't have such a clear accent when they speak English. But then there's a massive difference between the accents and the local tongue in Wales itself. Okay. So we have a clear division of North and South accent as well.
So what percentage of Welsh people living in Wales now do you think are truly biliterate in both English and Welsh? And does it differ by age?
Yeah, so it's normally the bracket of those in education, because they are taught it in their schools. And then you have the bracket of older people. But I'm not sure really, because we had a census a few years ago, and that gave some awful results, that there was less Welsh speakers in most areas. But there's actually 20,000 more Welsh speakers now than there was in 1971, which is good. But it's about 20% of the population in Wales.
Right. Well, and I would argue if pop culture is in the language, then the language is going to continue. Yeah. And I know when Gwen brought the 4 students over, there was a student who created calendars in English and calendars in Welsh. Yeah. And I know from the work I've done in American Indian Studies, one of the problems with Indian tribes now is that as the elders die, the children often know English and they don't know their home language. But you actually have Welsh language TV stations and Welsh radio. Yep. And that's wonderful, because that means the young people listening to music and watching TV, they are hearing Welsh, and that's being supported rather than having to get everything through an English medium.
There's a large, what we call in Welsh, Sîn Rock Gymraeg, the SRG, and that's these loads of local young bands. We have a massive festival every year, and this year 13,000 young people turned up to support it. So it's amazing. There's little things like that keep developing, and that's great. Yeah.
I know when I was listening last week to the Beatles on Sirius Beatles channel, Sirius Radio, they played I Want to Hold Your Hand, and then they played it in German, Komm, gib mir deine Hand. So even the Beatles were aware that with the German audience, maybe they would try to sing that. Yeah. Do you find pop culture groups are doing that? Maybe they don't even know the language, but they're given the transliterated words. Does that happen? Or is most of the Welsh music from Welsh groups?
It's normally from Welsh groups. Every now and again it does come through from English groups, but it could just be a couple of words or a phrase. Right. But I mean, most of the bigger bands, they're not Welsh, they are English, sure, or they're American even. So it's kind of difficult to it's a very small country to be influencing people in pop, I think.
Right. I want to talk a little bit about the Welsh Dragon now. And here in the village of Rio Grande, you may have noticed that all the street signs now have the Welsh Dragon on it. And if you could bring up the Gwynedd Mercy College picture, this is a college founded in the 19th century in a suburb of Philadelphia. And Gwynedd is a place name. Am I pronouncing it correctly?
Gwynedd.
Gwyneth.
Yeah.
So the double D is like a TH?
Yeah, but it's
Okay.
harder. It's a
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So can you
Yeah.
pronounce that then?
That would be Gwynedd Mercy College.
Okay. And you see the Welsh lion there, and I don't know much about it. I do know the Historia Britannium, which came out in the 9th century, what is the first text in English to acknowledge, to associate the Welsh dragon with Wales.
Yeah.
And it may have been much earlier than that. But again, I speak English and French, so,
Yeah.
so that's all I know. Do you know any history about the Welsh dragon, or why it's associated so closely to Wales?
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure. We were taught when we were in school about the story of the red dragon fighting the white dragon, and then
okay.
the red dragon won. But I'm not sure how that got to our flag.
To symbolize the
Yeah.
whole country. It's kind of like the English, in America, our eagle. I'm not sure exactly how that came, but the American eagle is part of it. We have to take a brief break for some PSAs. Please stay tuned and come back soon. Welcome back. This is Richard Sachs at University of Rio Grande, and I'm talking with Dan Rowbotham this afternoon. He's the Davis Intern at the Madog Center for Welsh Studies, and we've been discussing Welsh culture and the Welsh migration of some Welsh to southeastern Ohio. We recently looked at the Gwynedd, I'll have to work on that,
Yeah, you got that.
Mercy College symbol, college in suburban Philadelphia that uses the Welsh dragon. And we have a few pictures of some of the dormitories at Bryn Mawr College, Bryn Mawr being a Welsh place name too. That was the women's college next to my college, Haverford College, Haverford and Bryn Mawr both being suburbs. This is Denby Hall at Bryn Mawr College, and Bryn Mawr is a beautiful campus, almost all of it Gothic architecture. But there's Denby Hall, there's Pembroke East, here's Pembroke Hall, Pembroke East and West. Beautiful campus, just absolutely beautiful. Yeah. And everything was Welsh place names, including a small off-campus house that only had 4 or 5 students in it, and we called it Betsy Coed. I should have written this down, but it was like Betyys, it was B-E-T-Y-Y-S?
Yeah, Betus a Coed.
Okay, well, no, we didn't pronounce it like, because a Coed was C-O-E-D.
Yeah.
And we knew the women were co-eds, so girls would say, oh, I'm living at Betsy Coed.
Yeah.
But say it again for the...
Betus a Coed.
Okay. So I think it's charming, and I don't know the history of Philadelphia. You know, I know, William Penn and the Quakers and things like that. I have no idea why you have all those Welsh place names there, but it was truly part of the culture of the region. And I think people were proud of that too, that they saw that continuing language and so many things. I mean, we have a Boston because there's a Boston. We have New York because there's a York.
Yeah.
So many of our place names, Charleston and Portland and everything else, it's derived. Even though English people, not including Irish and others, English people are only 17 or 18% of the population.
Yeah.
But we have so many place names from all of Great Britain, and that's fascinating here. What are some of the differences that you see? I know when I travel, there are certain things that I expect and don't expect. For example, this is a wonderful part of the country to live in, but it's not a great place for Chinese food. We have like 1 or 2 options and that's it. Are there things that you see different in, and you've only been here 4 or 6 weeks?
Yeah, 6 weeks now,
About 6 weeks. But do you see things different, like in the palate? Not to say that our food service is great here or anything, but it's not horrible. Is there more salt or less salt, or more meat or more vegetables, or different kinds of vegetables? As you said, sheep, it's very rare that people eat lamb in the United States. I mean, you have it once in a while. Yeah. But essentially we're beef and chicken and pork. And you really have to look to buy lamb. But I've heard, is it New Zealand or Australia, like the whole country is overrun with sheep, so lamb is huge. So what are some of the differences in diet that you've seen from Wales to here?
I think there's a lot more salt and sugar in stuff.
Okay.
That is something I definitely noticed.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's not that I eat much lamb at home anyway. But there isn't much lamb here. but you know, I'm a big fan of beef and chicken. Yeah. And then when it comes to vegetables, I mean, we have something called mushy peas in the UK, which is like, you know, your garden, your normal sweet peas, mashed together. They're great. That is something I'm missing.
Okay.
But yeah, it's the chocolate here isn't as good as it is at home.
I can believe that. I can believe that.
It's a little creamier at home.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Because I know the little time I've spent in Europe, the Swiss chocolate there is so much better than even the Swiss chocolate you get here.
Yeah.
And Toblerone is so expensive here, but less so over there. Yeah. So tell us a little bit more about the Madog Center, since you're the Davis Intern. I know they have some interesting holdings. Hardly anybody goes over there to use the library, but they have some fascinating texts. But what are some of the things that Madog Center has? And also, since we only have 7 or 8 minutes left, what are some of the goals that you have? Because I believe this is a 1-year internship for you. Oh, 2 years. Oh, great. Yeah. Great. So hopefully you can really accomplish some things. So what are some of the outcomes that you're hoping over the next 22 or 23 months?
Yeah. I love it over there. The Madog Center is great. And it's weird being so far from home, but constantly reading and writing in Welsh and speaking and communicating in Welsh. And that's an opportunity I'm really grateful for, really. It makes me not miss home so much.
Oh, good.
But I think some of the things that I keep finding are really interesting. We have books between the Madog Center and the Welsh American Heritage Museum in Oak Hill. There are books that date right from the very beginning of the Welsh settlers here. There's all kinds of stuff, a lot of history on the Jackson Eisteddfod, on the Gymanfa Ganis, so the singing festivals. And some of the things I really want to work on. I mean, this year we're celebrating 200 years. And I think that is great. So there are celebrations going on in Wales, so we're really looking forward to being part of those, but also in making sure that we celebrate it here. And I think that's quite an exciting time to be part of things. But I really want to work on having a choir in the region, so that we can get some singing going on and having some fun, and working with schools as well. Just letting them know about that I'm here and that I want to do stuff, whether it's folk dancing, talking about love spoons, all kinds of stuff. And because it's 200 years, I want to see the connection between the Ohio schools and the schools back home in Ceredigion. So hopefully we'll get a pen pal project going on, and just seeing the cultural differences and letting the kids work it out for themselves, how culturally different it is, but also how similar everything is, and how many Davises and Jones and Evanses there are over here.
Yes, and for me it's always the double L too, the Lloyds and the Llewellyns that generally tips you off that the person is Welsh. You mentioned a couple things just now. First of all, the Oak Hill Museum in Oak Hill, Ohio, which is within our community college district. And if you haven't been there, it's wonderful. Yeah. And the church there also, I don't know if it's a Welsh church or if they always have activities that are consistent with that.
Yes, so we open up in the summer. So we're open for summer months. We're open for appointments if need be. And yeah, it's an old chapel, and it's a really great resource if you're looking into different things or you just want to know more about the area and the Welsh in the area. Right. I've been there a couple of times now. I love the place.
Okay, great. And you dropped another word that I have become familiar with in the 4 years I've worked here, but many of our viewers may not know it. Eisteddfod, which I'm going to mispronounce, which is a poetry and music and wonderful festival. Jackson High School has probably the largest one in Ohio, maybe in the States. But explain a little bit more what that is and how important it is to Welsh culture.
So back at home, the Eisteddfod, we have local Eisteddfods, we have youth Eisteddfod, and in fact the youth Eisteddfod happens every May, and there are 15,000 people under 25 competing in just 1 week alone. Wow. And all the competitions and everything is in Welsh. And the competitions include folk dancing, disco dancing, poetry, whether that's writing or reciting, drama and theatre work, so you could be scripting, you could be performing, literature competitions. So we have big competitions with the Chair and the Crown, and they are the big literary positions you want to gain. You want to be on that stage with your fake name. You have to compete under a fake name.
Oh, really?
And you want them to be doing their fanfare and calling your fake name, and you get to stand up in a massive pavilion which holds about 4,000 people and welcomes everybody up, and it's amazing. And then we take it one step further, and we have an 8-day festival. Which is based around the Eisteddfod, but it's so much more than the Eisteddfod. We have this youth festival, which is all about the Welsh pop and Welsh rock culture, and an opportunity for you to see different charities are doing, what different organisations in the area are doing. And this moves around every year, these Eisteddfods. One year they could be in Cardiff, our capital, or they could be right in the middle of nowhere in mid-Wales. And it's great. You get to see the country, you get to see the different cultures in different parts of the country. And there's people you might only see every year in the Eisteddfod, and you won't see them until the next August when it's time for the Eisteddfod again. And it's great. It brings everyone together. And that's something I'm really going to miss when I'm over here. That's a great holiday, working holiday. I normally work or find a job.
Maybe we can try to do one on campus,
too.
We'll
do that.
I think that would be great.
No worries at all.
I think one thing as an English professor that I loved learning about it is poetry, music, recitations, theater. I've often felt American society, as somebody who loves literature and loves poetry, that I'm way off to the margin because it's not really valued in American society to the degree that I could. But it seems like in Welsh society, it's front and center, with the expectation that, yes, some of you may sing better or recite poetry better or write poetry better, but everybody has that inside themselves to do. And to me, that's a wonderful thing, because as I was joking beforehand, the cover band I played in college, we were not very good, but we enjoyed the heck out of doing it. And our friends did too. And we didn't make much money doing it, but you know, we sang the songs that we loved, which were British folk songs and Pure Prairie League, which is a country rock group from Colorado. I don't know why, we just liked that music, so that's what we did. And that was great. Well, listen, we're right at the end of our half hour, and I want to thank Dan Rowbotham for being here.
Thank you.
I know, I'm hoping that we have all the papers so that you can start driving the intern car that we have, that Ford, that little Ford, and it must be we're driving on the wrong side of the road.
I haven't tried it yet.
Okay.
I'm still waiting, but when I do.
Okay. Well, I know those guys on Top Gear always say that we drive on the wrong side of the road.
Yes,
we're going to say you drive on the wrong side of the road. So, well, thank you so much, and thank you, Danny, for coming on. And thanks again, Voice of Rio Grande from University of Rio Grande in Rio Grande, Ohio. Thank you for watching.